Welcome to another episode of NC Gaming. My name's Carter.
And I'm Nick.
All right, and we're picking up now where we left off last time on Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. Easily one of the more bizarre titles that we've played, and that includes the Pokemon
Floating world map.
Yes, this was definitely back in the days when you could get away with a world map. You can't really do that nowadays, can you?
Really? I mean, I feel like there's a lot of games that have world maps. At least the games that I play. Then again, I have, I guess, very particular taste.
What have you been playing recently?
Well, I've been playing. Well, I just got the Majora's Mask. Actually, you just got me the Majora's Mask for reasons that we'll discuss later. But I've been playing Majora's Mask a lot. I've been playing a lot of Borderlands. I've been getting back into that. And mostly those two. But those games have worlds, and a lot of the other games I've been into, including Pokemon and Zelda and any other kind of RPG, tend to focus on maps.
I kind of think, because I guess when I imagine it, nowadays a lot of video games, you can't get away with kind of almost like selecting a world. Most worlds, they demand some kind of like natural segue. Like you have to be able to walk directly from one to the other.
Right. Does this game add some kind of teleporting feature? Well, I guess you can, when you get to the world map, you're just zooming from
hop bop around.
Okay, that's not bad. All right, Mallow is
he's leveled up.
Still weak.
He's really pitiful. He's definitely
you might as well make him so that he can't die.
Well, I mean that would definitely be useful. As the game goes on, he becomes the most useless character because in terms of just general roles, Mario is your all-around character. You have to have him in your party.
Yep. He's always that way in every game. He's the balanced
character that nobody goes to. Nobody plays as Mario in Mario Kart.
Except for your friend that you're teaching.
Oh, yeah. He's like, Mario's good.
Start with Mario.
The most recognizable character in video games and possibly most popular culture.
Yeah.
But, I think...
how would you describe Mallow? Mallow almost seems like the wizard of the group.
You know what? He's a mage that won't quite commit to being a mage. He's like, I can do magic, but I want to have a little bit of attack.
Yeah.
So therefore He
didn't make it through Mage Academy.
He wants to be jack of all trades, but really he's just not worth much of anything. Because he gets replaced so quickly in this game by Geno.
Right.
And he's a very powerful
He's actually a good
spellcaster.
mage.
Right.
Is there just some aspect of Mallow that we just haven't uncovered yet that we find later in life, or he's just the tag along? He's just the annoying tag along.
He's the annoying tag along, and his big plot twist is that he's not a tadpole. Surprising.
Well, I didn't think of that. You're kidding me? That's not a tadpole?
That's his plot twist.
Wow.
He's not a tadpole. He's some sort of
poor thing.
Like royalty.
He's really the Jerry of the group.
He absolutely is the Jerry, Gary, Larry of the of the group, because he eventually meet Geno, who's your spellcaster, who replaces Mallow. Then you get Peach, who's your white mage, and she's your healer.
Gotcha.
And then
healer is a very specific type of mage.
Right, so that'd be in like Final Fantasy, like a white mage.
Right. Bowser being your just sort of all around.
He's your tank. Yeah. And
makes
so
sense.
Depending on your play style, by the end of the game, you'll always go with Mario because you have to, Peach because enemies are dealing enough damage, and then if you're a magic user, you use Geno, and if you're everybody else who wants to actually win the game, you're Bowser. So,
but I would imagine that seeing a lot of these games that tank, take Pokemon for instance. You take some tank give me an example, like Slowpoke, Slowbro, or
Regigigas, the ultimate tank.
Exactly. They lost in speed, but are you really losing anything in this game? Because you take turns fighting. Is there a speed aspect to the stats?
I think there is.
Characters?
I think I definitely notice a speed just on who gets to take a turn first. Similar to in Pokemon, where the speed definitely gets to choose who gets to hit first, but so often in Pokemon, that speed is everything, because whoever gets to hit first essentially means that you're going to get to hit twice. And it doesn't matter how powerful you are, you're never going to be more powerful than 2 hits in a row.
Exactly.
Which is why, competitively, you're gonna see a
Speed
million.
is like the most important thing in competitive.
Oh, absolutely.
Understood.
So, which is why Regigegos was actually labeled the worst Pokemon
Really?
of all time. Yeah, he has a move called Slow Start, which gives him half his.
I just don't get that.
It halves his statistics until the third turn.
Yeah, it's really weird. Are his statistics already high to begin with?
Well, they're high to begin with, but you cut anything in half, and he's getting into
bad.
just normal Pokemon range.
Yeah.
And he's still very slow to begin with.
These
so
platforms, oh my gosh.
I think this is back in the days before playtesting.
Yeah.
Before they just like, listen, this is a really bad idea. We need something different.
Except I had a really hard time with a couple of the spots in Majora's Mask as I've been playing through lately.
Mm-hmm.
Like the forest, the Lost Woods, where you follow the monkey, was
Yeah.
extremely difficult. They made the monkey way faster than I remembered.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why. It took me like 4 tries.
Did that upset you? Did that upset your childhood?
It was like a surprise. It was like a shock to my system. But then I was like, "Oh, dang! This is a real game. This is something to challenge me."
They definitely mixed up the Majora's Mask game. They made a few updates, and they threw in a few subtle curveballs for the people, like you and me. Majora's Mask was one of our favorite games, so we played it a lot of times. And therefore, when there's this,
not like this game.
Yeah, this game is just. I bet there's an actual population of people who've played this game so many times they know.
They have a conference once a year.
Oh yeah, they have a conference. They have T-shirts. there's a convention where they discuss the merits of Mallow. But there's actually a surprising amount of followings for like very obscure games.
Oh, totally.
I think Majora's Mask would be definitely a contender for that, even though it was a Zelda title. I think a lot of people were definitely clamoring for a Majora's Mask game, especially after Ocarina of Time for 3DS.
But the second it becomes any more popular, it loses its cultdom.
Right, because the last thing that a cult wants is acceptance.
Right.
I think the Mormons are proof of that.
You would know.
Oh my goodness.
Carter has Mormon neighbors.
I do have Mormon neighbors. They have, they have solar panels on the roof and 6 months worth of food in their basements. And they're an interesting group.
Yeah.
They had us over for a party, and they invited all of the neighbors over. We weren't allowed to wear shoes in their house.
Japanese Mormons?
Yeah, you'd think so. Although it was very interesting seeing a bunch of grown-ups standing around in their socks. That was definitely one of my...
Church of the Latter-day Saints.
Latter-day Saints, yeah. But, so you said you've been playing Borderlands and Majora's Mask, so... Yeah. Have you, any other games that you've played recently that you've enjoyed? Or?
That is it.
Is this your first time playing Borderlands, or
no?
Oh, you.
This is what makes Borderlands so addicting, and this is Borderlands 2, is you play through the different characters and you go through their skill trees, and it's just nuts. It's a lot of fun. Right now I'm playing the Commando, which is he's like an assault rifle. He has a lot of stats that can make his his fire rate go up. He can throw a turret. He is really good with launchers. It's like the craziest guy I've ever built up. So it's a lot of fun. What's fun is when you beat the game, you play through the game a second time, except you continue the stats where you were in the end.
So wouldn't that make it overly easy, or how does that work?
No, the enemies are adjusted accordingly.
Oh, okay.
So you have So in the beginning, your first gun has a power of 20.
Oh, okay.
And then when you go back, you have you'll start over and you'll get a gun and it's 1,000.
Oh,
and that's your starting point.
Okay,
and it just gets really ridiculous really quickly, and it's a lot of fun.
Oh, that's awesome though. So it's just something to kind of keep you engaged, because you can do that with an RPG as opposed to just.
Oh yeah, it's what did I hit? Oh, I hit an 80. Oh, what am I gonna hit? You're constantly getting sucked into the stats, and that is something that gets me really sucked into games, especially with Pokemon, with any of these RPG games. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things, when I was younger, that would have been something that I would have just been nah, I can't pay attention to this. This is too... The most I could handle was Zelda. Oh, I get the Master Sword, and that's just 1 slice per kill, not 2. That's the most I can handle.
That's probably very intentional,
Yeah.
Because I think that... I have noticed, actually, that Nintendo is much less numbers RPG based.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of, as we're playing a Nintendo RPG, But what have you noticed, I guess, kind of going on to that, like when you were a kid, like what appealed to you? When you were an adult,
Yeah.
what appeals to you now?
You know, that's a weird thing to think about because when I think back to the games, I just remember the nostalgia of looking at the cover
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, seeing the commercial for it. I sort of think because in the early stages, video games were so new to me, it was this new mystical world, this new unknown.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think what probably captured me more than anything was the story and the sort of general look of the game. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it exactly. I remember being really captured by you know, like the first time I played a Zelda game, like the first time I played, you know, the first one, just really captured me. The music and the color, and there was just something about it. Just the novelty of playing a video game, I think, or owning a video game.
It was just it was a private world, almost.
Right. Now we understand that. We just sit down, play a video game. Just download this on my phone and we'll play it. So that novelty is gone. And now I think we are like looking at it in a truer sense, if that makes sense.
So before we were almost so sucked up in what the video game was trying to show us, and now kind of as you're an adult, you're almost like, how can I understand this video game as like a medium in and of itself?
Right. Which is funny where we've developed to a point where we're so critical of everything to the point where we almost can't even enjoy anything, to the point of like, now here we are sitting watching a game, poking fun of it, right? Enjoying it. I mean, this is this is an awesome game. I mean,
it's a great game. It's goofy,
but it's just something like this to just imagine even 10 years ago that people would do something like this would just seem unthinkable.
Absolutely. But okay, so here's an interesting question for you. I absolutely agree with you that as the video game industry has become so much more mainstream, we've become more critical of it. And I think that goes with absolutely any artistic medium.
Yeah.
You know, you take, art during any major period. As soon as there's a major movement in art, people become critical of it.
Yeah.
Same with food. It's the same with books. It's the same with movies. And so now video games have just kind of come into their own of hypercriticalness.
Yeah.
Do you think that means that we enjoy them less as a whole, or do you think that means that we're actually being much more poignant and we're only enjoying the best?
That's an interesting question. I think just, our view of it gets distorted by always comparing it to something and comparing it to an experience, and everybody's different. And, I pick up one game and I enjoy it. I'll pick up another game and I'll hate it. Somebody else will like it. And there's this sea of comments and criticisms around so many different kinds of games. And, that video I showed you of that guy who does a 30-minute video basically explaining why Ocarina of Time is an extremely boring game.
Right.
And why, what's the other one? The NES title. Why Link to the Past is actually a great game.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, I never thought of that, but he made some solid points. I was like, that's totally true. Did I just enjoy this game because I was young?
And it was your first experience?
Yeah, I don't know. Huh. I actually really do think that video games in general have changed a lot. I think that they were applying certain kinds of, I think now we can say we're in the age of video games, whereas this was an age of where they were just trying things out.
Mm-hmm.
They were comparing it from other forms, similar to when TV, or maybe not TV. Think about when radio became a thing. They didn't realize they could use sound effects. They just read off scripts. They didn't realize they could have the shoes on the thing and sound effects and oh wait, we don't just have to read these plainly. We can actually use sound effects. We can do accents. And then when they went from radio to TV, it was reading dry thing. They didn't realize there was a visual aspect. So every time that media has advanced, they've always used it in the older form, not realizing the full
scope of it.
Scope, exactly. And so I still think these early video games were in a kind of older form. And I just don't know what it is about older games like this, whether it is just nostalgia from our memories, or there really is just a kind of classy oldness to it that I don't know. You know what I mean? That's always been the thing people talk about. Get into all kinds of hilarious arguments on the internet.
So then, here's the question for you: does nostalgia actually have a value, or is nostalgia just something that we attribute?
Oh, it's you could have this conversation all day. I had an art history class where my professor, we were discussing the idea of beauty,
Mm-hmm.
and he and I thought he did a really good job. He basically debunked the whole idea of beauty being in the eye of the beholder. That's pretty false.
Mm-hmm.
You really just can't say that. Oh, I can just decide what's beautiful. He
Right.
said no. And he, coming from a certain perspective where you would say there is an absolute beauty created, we can understand that. And that's not to say that we can necessarily know. And there's different perspectives. He said, if my son hands me a piece of noodle art,
Yeah.
and I hang it on my refrigerator door, there's a certain sense when you can say that is not real art, but there's a certain sense where you can say that's beautiful. It's beautiful that your son can create that, and he gives it to you, and he loves you. And there's something about that. Whereas this game is great, and so is so is Halo Guardians coming out. But I think there's value on different levels that I just can't really figure out.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's kind of like the difference between hearing like some artist that you really love, like music wise, hearing their first CD and hearing their most recent. Their most recent is their most developed.
Oh, that's such a great example.
Yeah, but your first
people get so critical of new albums.
Oh, absolutely.
Now this was a tough battle.
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
this was why the first 20 minutes of this video was just us training.
We
had to go back. We could not beat him.
All training.
Now this Thunderbolt was a very good move.
It was very good,
effective.
Surprisingly, but no, oh my gosh, he's a very creative enemy. Purple dinosaur with hat. They made a dinosaur gangster. I liked it.
Barney.
Yeah.
Barney
the purple
with a top
dinosaur.
hat.
Yeah, as a gangster. I think that's, I don't know, because I'm thinking about it now, and this is something that interested me.
Yeah.
So for the audience, I work with, and Nick does too. We work with high school kids at our church.
Yeah.
One of my high school kids came to me, and he started playing Earthbound.
Oh.
For the Super Nintendo, which came out at around the same time.
Yeah.
And Earthbound, there's never been another game like it.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that sense, there is no replacement for it. There's no evolution to that game.
Yeah.
Because there's never been anything
That's
even really similar to Earthbound.
Yeah. So it's just kind of frozen in time as this.
Right. And that kind of got me thinking about it because for those of you in the audience who've maybe played Earthbound mixes some very, innocent early RPG elements with very adult elements. The final boss is a representation of an unborn fetus.
Yeah.
And that's, that's very dark terms. But we actually got into that discussion, and the kid that I'm working with has actually reached an age where he understands that symbolism, and he understands that as a dark theme in it, even just for a video game or in anything. And so I'm actually kind of glad that he was able to play that game, because you're not going to get that experience with anything else. And that kind of got me thinking about, nostalgia versus new age is perhaps the actual value in the game is the message that it's sending.
Yeah. And
so with old games, there are certain old games you can't send that message ever again.
Mm-hmm.
So you take a game like this, this Super Mario RPG, it's a great game, and it later evolved into the Paper Mario series.
Yeah.
So the Mario RPG message kind of got carried on to other games. It's kind of fun, it's goofy, it's got a good sense of humor, so it can be enjoyed, but this message could be evolved.
Yeah.
But there's definitely titles that we're never going to be able to evolve, because the medium has changed, the times have changed, and the message, you can't retell that message.
Similar to the way that, I'm a huge Calvin and Hobbes fan. I grew up reading that, and I know for a while they've been wanting to make a movie, like a live action or like a 3D, graphic. And I think that's great and all, but you cannot. There's so much that you just can't capture from going from a cartoon, a very simple form, to like a live action. You lose so much. It's just not even the same. I'm not saying that you can't create the same characters with roughly the same, bit lines and whatnot, but you really do lose some. And that's not to say that you can't have great movies out there that are,
totally.
I think some people have this conversation. They automatically will say, well, that newer is bad. Well, newer is not necessarily bad, but older isn't necessarily good,
better.
So
right. Because you can tell a story better.
I think you can, yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, I think our perfect, I'm hoping this comes out well, is the Mad Max movies, which are coming out. The movies in the 80s, they didn't have the technology to tell the story that wanted to be told. It was a post-apocalyptic movie with road warriors and just that desperation. Everything was a desert. 1980s, the best they could do was to coop up get a bunch of El Camino cars, make them look really crazy, put people in mohawks, and have car chases out in the Nevada desert.
Yeah.
Nowadays, we have the special effects to create a desert, have firestorms, have crazy special effects with crazy vehicles.
Yeah.
I think that this movie is going to be better than the original Mad Max movies.
Sure.
Just for that reason, because you have that ability.
Uh-huh.
But then you take other examples, like, did you see the Great Gatsby movie?
Yep.
Did you see the original Great Gatsby movies?
I did not.
I would actually go out on a limb to say that the original Great Gatsby movies were better.
So in that instance, it was better.
Because that era captured the era of the 1920s so much better than...
Oh, here we go. Shy Guy.
Oh, yeah, the Shy Guys. Which we'll actually get into the interesting symbolism of the Shy Guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but...
There were some weird scenes in this town, as I remember.
Oh, yeah. But, here's an interesting point. And I know this is something that we've covered before, but Shy Guys were never supposed to be Mario villains.
Yeah, I never knew that until you told me.
Mm-hmm. Shy Guys...
Explain it.
Well, the original Shy Guys appeared in Super Mario Bros. 2, which was never supposed to be a Mario title.
It's a great game.
Oh, it's a fantastic game. It's a quirky, strange, from that Nintendo era where sequels were nothing like the originals. But these games, it was originally supposed to be a standalone title, and then Nintendo looked at it and said, we're not going to be able to sell this as a standalone. We're going to make this as a sequel to Mario, just to, grab some more copies, make some more sales. So they put Mario in. That's why you have the 4 characters. And so when they put the 4 characters in there, they turned it into a Mario game. But Shy Guys actually have a very dark theme behind them, because the masks are originally Japanese spirits that died and have forgotten their identities.
Oh, wow.
And they're looking for an identity, and they're looking to steal it from a living person.
Gee whiz.
I don't know if you ever saw the movie Spirited Away.
No.
It was a Miyazaki movie, and it featured another character with a very similar Shy Guy mask called No Face, who gained its identity by eating people. And it would eat things, and it became enlarged, and that was a part of its character.
Yeah.
And it was like a small antagonist for an arc of the movie. But that's the whole Japanese lore.
Wow.
Is that the Japanese spirits with the blank masks are almost semi-demons looking to take an identity by stealing it. And now we have them on pogo sticks.
This is the one game that I can... Well, I guess they're the bad guys and Mario World 2.
Mm-hmm. They're not even bad guys. They're just there.
They're just kind of... Yeah, they just happen to be in the wrong place.
At the wrong time.
As Mario and... oh, yeah, you could be Peach. That was the one where Peach would float.
Mm-hmm.
That had to have been some leftover. They just decided, we'll just transfer that ability to Peach. Do you even know what kind of game it was?
It was originally supposed to be the same game, but it had a very typical Japanese name. It was, I think it was like Tamaki no something or other.
Yeah.
And it, it just translates to something world something like.
Yeah.
It was just going to be a typical Japanese game, and it was just going to be a platformer the same way that we made original platformers like Donkey Kong, like any of those titles. Yeah. And it was just going to be original with original characters, and then Nintendo just turned it into a Mario game, as so many titles that were originally supposed to be independent titles just got picked up and turned into something different. So, you know, and sometimes that's worked, and sometimes it has, not been such a huge success.
Yeah.
So I'd be very curious to know, because I know that you're a huge fan of Zelda too.
Oh, huge fan.
I'd be very curious to know how that went, because Zelda 1 was such a huge hit, and then to just turn it into something radically different.
Yeah, it was way different. That's the weird thing. Like, I think it's different. At the time, I didn't really think of it as being super different, because a lot of the concepts are the same. Is you're starting out in this nice little safe zone. You move out into the woods, into the mountains, this dangerous world. The format was slightly different. You obviously had the side view rather than the kind of bird's eye view that a lot of Zeldas use. But and when I was younger, I never got very far in the game because you don't actually have items. Well, you do have items for sort of utility items for like you have a raft, you have a whistle, you have a hammer to break.
Necessities for survival.
Oh yeah. But you have magic instead of items. You have, like, you can shoot fire. You can turn into a fairy. You can heal yourself. And you have a jump. I mean, it's like the only Zelda. It's the only game where
that ever had a jump ability.
Yeah.
And you never saw it again until Link to the Past with Rock's Feather.
Right.
And even then, that was an item.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a very different title, especially because think about what Nintendo was mostly doing at the time. Any sequel was sort of a take the same graphics engine and just add levels.
Yeah.
Or add a new character,
Mm-hmm. They, I don't know how they did it, but they were able to just create a huge world of like eight or nine dungeons, all these villages, all these people you talk to, and that was what did it for me. I mean, I enjoyed playing like Super Mario back in the day, but like I really would go back to Zelda because it was like there's a story here. You don't just start over and see how many points you get. There's a story. You're acquiring different items, talking to different people, hearing different stories, unlocking things. That just really captured my imagination, and I think it did for a lot of other people.
Although speaking of imagination, I thought this was very interesting. Do you know that Mario killed the point-and-click adventure genre?
No.
Because at that time, consoles were in a war against computers. And that was back in the days when you could buy a game on a floppy disk. And they were all point-and-click adventures.
Yeah.
And then a lot of smaller companies were churning them out, but they were churning them out at a ridiculously fast rate. Like a new game every 3 months.
Jeez.
And they were very, very quickly made, very poorly made, point-and-click adventures. And, you'd have like 6 installments of, Space Quest or something like that. And then Mario came out, and it single-handedly destroyed that industry.
Interesting.
Which I think is very interesting, because the point-and-click adventure genre has only just come back. But Mario, and then Zelda brought a little bit of story back to it, but Mario completely took the story element out of video games, which is so ironic, because now story is what's really selling video games again.
There's some story.
To the original Mario?
Yeah.
You think so?
Oh, the original? Well, there's a...
Well, Mario Brothers, because Mario Brothers was one of the biggest selling titles of all time.
It's just with Zelda, it's so much more complex. There's so many different people that you talk to who have different things you're trying to accomplish.
I would agree. And I mean, Zelda 2 definitely led to certain titles like Castlevania, which became very popular because that brought on like the side-scrolling adventure versus just the side-scroller move to the right and you'll eventually win.
Right.
So, it's good. Here's an interesting question, though.
Yeah.
What would you say is an actual video game that changed your perspective on video games?
Changed my perspective.
Because there's certain video games that actually change not only your perspective, but your expectations.
Well, I think. What about you? Well, I think.
Well, you think? I mean, there's definitely been a few titles. I mean, I would definitely say Majora's Mask changed my perspective of what could be told in a video game.
Yeah.
Because that was much heavier themes.
Yeah.
And that was my first experience with somebody saying something real in a video game versus that's a bad guy, you should go stop them.
Right.
I mean, I know that there's definitely a lot of titles that could do it, but I would definitely say The Last of Us, which was a title that came out for PlayStation 3, dealt with some of the heaviest themes that I've dealt with in anything. Because that whole point of the game, rather than it being save the world, is save the only person that matters to you.
Yeah.
Because, and spoilers here, at the end of the game, you find out that the girl that you've been taking across the country, because she has the cure for the disease that's wiped out the entire population, in order to get that cure, they're going to have to kill her, because, you know, it's they're going to have to take out her brainstem.
Yeah.
And your character says, no, I'm not going to let you do that. And he kills the doctors, he kills the survivalists, and he takes the girl away, and he says, I'd rather have this one child live than save everybody else in the world. Even recognizing that she'll probably die a painful death. And he not only takes her, he kills the people that were trying to save humanity.
Yeah.
So he becomes the actual enemy of the game. And when you first experience that, you think, you know, oh, that's an absolutely terrible move. But then you realize, well, that's his character. He's had literally everything taken from him. Well, if you're in that situation where everything's been taken from you, you don't care about the world anymore. You just want the one thing that matters.
Right.
And I just thought that was like a much deeper point than anything I've ever played in a video game before.
Yeah.
Because most characters are painfully altruistic.
And I think Majora's Mask did that for me. Similar kind of thing. It was much weightier than a lot of the other games that I had played.
I think I'm kind of realizing this now, we find weight in anything that's not the standard characters. We find weight in anything that's, in a sense, not Mario. Because Mario doesn't have real opinions except justice and good.
Yeah.
And he fights the good fight. He brings good to the world, and he never loses anything.
No.
Nothing's ever taken from him. Nothing, you know, he never has lost a real battle. And so we're like, okay, this is all well and good. And then as soon as anything else happens to a character, we're like, oh, that's deep, you know?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it's interesting. Did you have any favorite characters in video games at all?
Favorite characters in video games? You know, I'm always a big fan of random shorts kid in Pokemon who loves to tell you about.
I like shorts; they're comfy and easy to wear.
Oh, you know,
he goes through a lot of development in that game. You know, he finds that he likes shorts, then he finds they're comfy.
I actually legitimately thought that they were like all the same people at one point. Like, you see a hiker, then you see him again. This was first gen where they didn't have their first name. You know how they'd be like, hiker Mike wants to fight you. You know what I mean? Now, before I thought they were the same person. I thought I was like, oh, this freaking kid. So I was like, wait, he's there. He's over there. I started to realize, like, wait, they're in the same screen.
Yeah, and you're like, oh,
something's up here.
It's not the same character. I can see that, though. That's interesting. So, did you ever hear the interesting theory about Gary in that video game?
No.
In Red and Blue?
In the game?
So, apparently with Gary, you know how you face him in Lavender Town?
Yeah. I think so.
Apparently the reason that he's there is because you killed his Raticate. So, the time that you fight him before that, he has a Raticate in his party.
And then it's gone.
You never see that Raticate
Oh, that's really funny. I never heard that.
And you don't see it. It's gone.
Wow.
And then he's in Lavender Town. And there's another interesting thing where you can kind of interpret it. He's very mean to you for the rest of the game. Before then, he's just your rival. Jerky, and he's like, hey, let's fight. Let's have fun. But for the rest of the game, he says, we're going for it.
He just hates you for some reason.
You murdered his Pokemon.
I never really understood. I thought it was always impossible for a Pokemon to die.
Yeah. Yeah. Which should be strange to think about, given the flames and ice and
they can live through fire blast,
and poison,
but
they can't stand anything else.
basically.
It's very those were interesting games. There was
They can block out other types of energies, but they just can't control their own.
And there's a lot of theories behind Red and Blue.
Oh,
like that Giovanni was actually a protagonist, and he was a good guy in the series.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, and that his whole, basically Team Rocket's whole point of existence was to stop Mewtwo. Because he was like stealing the Sylph Scope, which allow him to get Ghost type Pokemon, which at the time were the only thing that could beat a Psychic. So, and which Mewtwo was.
Yeah.
And Mewtwo had out of control stats back then.
For that time, yeah.
Right. Which now have been...
Psychic in general was way overpowered in the first gen.
Which was why Pokemon Stadium Kadabra was one of the best Pokemon you can play as.
Oh, yeah?
Did you ever play the Pokemon Stadium games?
Pokemon Stadium games were awesome. Only it was really annoying. You would have, I would have a Charmander, Charmeleon, and Charizard. Charizard would know Ember.
Yeah.
But Charmander would know Flamethrower.
That's a very strange mix.
Yeah.
So...
to balance it out. So, the weaker one would have better moves, but the later evolved form would have...
Who made that executive decision?
I don't know. Nintendo is all about equalizing. When you're last place in Mario Kart, the shell goes to first place.
The blue shell.
It knocks out the guy in first place. It knocks out the 1%.
That's who I want to choose as my inspirational character, is Toad from Mario Kart. You know, the light, spry character who gets knocked around by Bowser and DK, who nobody played as except for in battle mode.
Basically.
Because nobody ever chooses in a race the slowest character. But
it's a long battle.
This was an interesting one, though. I do like the graphic for fire. This was an interesting one, though, because this is your first major plot-based battle.
What is he? Can we talk about that for a second? He is a
sword on a sword.
Oh, I never noticed him as a sword.
I think that's a general theme, because remember in Smithy's castle, he's kind of like... Because remember, Smithy comes and takes it over with a sword.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming that he's like some kind of sword. Although, I do have to say that a spring at the hilt would probably be the worst possible feature that you could put on a sword.
It's like a nunchuck.
You can kind of wiggle it.
Kind of whip it.
You can wiggle it at people, and it makes them, Of course, none of these swords are actually swords. They're all just living entities.
Oh, yeah.
Although this is our first star, which signals that we're 1/7 of the way through the game.
Who knows the significance of that at this point?
Yeah, they don't really explain the stars.
Yay, you got a star. It doesn't have a face.
No.
You didn't have to pay 20 coins for it.
You did not have to
What
pay
are the Shy Guys doing right now?
You know what? They're just in the little nooks. They're watching.
They couldn't get out?
I guess not. Well, we annihilated the rest of them.
Yeah.
And actually, there's
the same thing happened to them.
I like how the graphics are very in that day. You can almost see how they were programmed.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we need one GIF of an extending and retracting star. Then we have these graphics, which were clearly copy and pasted 7 times. Yeah. They were very. You could almost see the programming that went behind them. Like, you feel like if given enough time, you could have done this yourself. Which is a weird feeling for a game.
I always think I can do something, and then the more I look at it, I'm like, no way could I do this.
Yeah, but
I just want to know how they did it in those days without computers that we have now.
Programming. You have to...
So you didn't look at the work while you were creating it?
That's
what I've always wondered.
That's a really good question, because, so some of it is somewhat simple. So, if you look at the fire has, so I'm looking here, 1, 2, 3. It has 3 animations. It looks like a lot more, but if you look at it, there's 3 different settings. There's small, medium, and large. And they grow and they shift. You can get away with a lot, and it looks like flickering fire, but it's 3 animations. So you just have to create 3 pixels and then just set them to alternate.
Yeah.
So that I get.
Right.
You know what I mean? But what I've never understood in games is scene changes or character movement or things like cutscenes.
Yeah.
That's always come across to me as something that would be very memory intensive. And yet this game here, when we downloaded it, was I think 100 megabytes.
Yeah.
Which is nothing.
You can literally store all of Nintendo's games before N64 for something like 300 megabytes.
That's nothing. You know?
Nothing.
300 megabytes is like 4 CDs on iTunes now.
Yeah. Well, one of my college professor was boasting over the fact that he had a 80 megabyte hard drive in college.
An 80 megabyte?
So what's going on here?
He moves on to the Karo sewers. I think that's just giving you your next quest. And this actually wraps up our episode.
All right.
So we're at the end here. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for bearing with us through all our topics. Have a good one.
See ya.
That was good.
Yeah.
I thought that was
Even
actually...
though I am really tired.
Oh, yeah, no.
I don't know if you can tell.
No, it's all good. How's your head?
It's okay. I was actually up at 6. Well, Leah had to sleep over. She had to leave at 6.
Oh, she was here too?
Yeah.
So, I thought that was good, though.
Yeah,
do you like that
I thought that
conversation?
went very well.
Yeah.
I thought that was good for, the actual episode itself was kind of boring. So, I mean, there just wasn't a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah.
Directly to the video.
It's so hard because, like, you see all these Let's Play videos people do, and you're like, that looks so easy. And now we're actually doing it.
Yeah.
And we're realizing it's pretty involved.
It is.
There's a lot of steps to it.
They must not do the videos